Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for stopping by, and welcome to a new season of Sports Talk Live. I'm Travis Udell.
I'm Logan Beatty.
And I'm Alec Bruss.
Well, let's get right into the swing of things. Wisconsin, 10-6 losers versus Iowa. One of the big question marks in this one, Joel Stave, 4 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and 2 fumbles. What are your takeaways from this game?
It's one of the most frustrating games that I've had to watch, barring the game against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. I mean, when you have a defensive game like that, when you see guys like Caputo, you see guys like Schobert put it all out there on the field and play the way they did and give up 10 points just off turnovers, and you still lose the game at home in Camp Randall, it's extremely disappointing. Stave had 4 turnovers, 2 picks, 2 fumbles, one of them right on the goal line, tripping over his own offensive lineman's foot. And, you know, you would expect a senior to have the presence of mind that if he knows he's going down and he's holding that ball out there, pull that thing back in and just take the sack. Take the loss of play, live to get into the end zone on, I think it was first or second down.
That definitely right there was one of the biggest points in the game. That costed the game for them, clearly.
Yep, and I mean, I realize Stave wasn't the only thing. You have missed field goals, you have other missed opportunities, but it's really hard not to go in there and blame Stave for that loss. It was an awful quarterback game. He's missing guys by 2 or 3 yards each throw.
Yeah, he hasn't been doing too well. It was a tough game. It was their first home loss in 10 games, and it was only their 8th loss in 79 home games. Also, they have no Corey Clement, who is their top rusher. So it wasn't really only Stave. They really couldn't run the ball. They only ran the ball for 86 yards after averaging 188 yards for the first 4 weeks. And then, I mean, their defense played good. Iowa puts up 37.8 points per game before this game, and then they only put up 10 points this game. And they even forced 2 fumbles and got 1 back. So, I mean, they didn't play too bad, but Stave just didn't perform.
Let's go back to the running game a little bit. You know, Wisconsin football, they're used to having a very good rushing game with Melvin Gordon. What do you think is going on this season? What do you think it's going to take to get that Wisconsin offensive running game going again?
I think a lot of it comes down to their offensive line. You know, you still have Volts at center, who is an All-American. He's great. But you had to add in a lot of young guys who this is their first year on the offensive line. You're kind of seeing that. I mean, with that play with Stave, tripping over the offensive lineman's foot. Still guys are still inexperienced. And, you know, I've watched, I think Hawaii was the only game where I saw a noticeable push by the offensive line where they're actually shoving guys 3-4 yards off the line. You didn't see that at all against Iowa, and I think Clement speaks to that. But, you know, when you think of Wisconsin, you think offensive linemen, and that's just not the case this year.
Yeah, I would say the main thing, I mean, besides fresh offensive linemen, is they just don't have Corey Clement, and they really need him back.
Yeah, definitely. When they get him back, I expect to see that running game go back to the way that it used to be. Moving on now to the Packers. Another big win, 4-0, off to a great start. What do you guys think from that game?
Well, I actually think they played really well. It was the first game that our offense actually didn't play too well like they used to, or like they have the first 3 games. And our defense actually stepped up, which we really haven't seen yet this year. And now when they really needed to, they did. Through the first 3 games that Kaepernick has played us, he's ran for more than 100 yards twice and passed for more than 400 yards once. And every time we have like a read option quarterback coming to play Green Bay, I feel like all of us Green Bay fans kind of cringe at it because we can't seem to stop the read option or even the run game. And we kind of proved it. Our defense really stepped up and came through when Rodgers, I mean, he played good, Rodgers, but he didn't play like the fantastic ball that he's been playing.
I think the big key is that if you go on the road, and I think it gets understated that when a team has to take a West Coast trip, you go out there, you play an early, it was a 3 o'clock game, but it's 12 o'clock there. You travel, and you go in there, you don't turn the ball over, you play great defense, you stop the run. And I think for the Packers, it's just like a collective sigh of relief because earlier in the year you beat Seattle. You couldn't beat them at all. You finally do that. You couldn't beat San Francisco. They pummeled you in the playoffs twice. You finally get that off your back. I think that they're kind of almost starting to look like a team of destiny to me with, you know, they're kind of exercising the demons that they've had in the past. Their defense, you know, we complained about stopping the run like in the preseason. How are they going to do that? Raji's played well. Palmer has stepped up big time coming in for the injury that they had at middle linebacker. they've had 13 sacks in the last 2 games, and that was a big issue for me personally as a Packer fan. How are they going to get to the quarterback with Clay moving to middle linebacker? And I think they've stepped up big time.
Yeah, they've done a great job so far. Do you guys think that it's a little bit of a problem, the offense only putting up 17 points? What's your take on that?
After the first 3 games, with how they played then, I don't think it really was a problem. They did only put up 17, but the 49er defense played pretty well, and their cornerbacks really shut down our receivers that really didn't give options for Rodgers. So I really don't think it's a problem yet.
I think, right when that game starts, too, you have a huge drop by Montgomery down the sideline. That could have been a touchdown. You have a missed field goal as well. I don't really see, if you look at Rodgers' numbers, his completion percentage was great. He was still finding open guys. They had a lot of times where you'd have 3rd and 1 or 3rd and short, and they'd throw the ball. It's like, trust your guys. You have Lacey. I know he's a little banged up, but just plow the line, get the first downs, do the things. I think they did a great job of ball control. They held the ball for more than half the game. I think, they didn't score a lot of points, but they still dominated that game from beginning to end.
Isn't that weird, us being Packer fans, saying Rodgers has a mediocre game here, and we're criticizing
he throws for 65%.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable the things that he can do. Moving on to the Milwaukee Brewers, they wrapped up yet another season. Not quite the great season that they wanted and we expected, but they let 7 coaches go yesterday. Do you think that's going to help them out?
Praise heaven and the Lord above. The Brewers season is over. I think a lot of people kind of got, after the abysmal end to the season prior, how it went, people were like, all right, we're buying in this year. Everyone's coming back. It's going to be a great season. I think people kind of forgot that what they did last season earlier was kind of smoke and mirrors. They were kind of overachieving a little bit, and then at the end of the year, I think that's the team that they really were. This year you saw that on full scale. But, a lot of people are disappointed. I'm disappointed. But I really think this season can be the start of something really good for this franchise where you finally start bringing in young guys again. You can do what you want. Maybe you talk to guys about trading Lucroy. Maybe you see if Braun can waive his no-trade clause that he has. And just essentially do what the Cubs did. You brought in a lot of young guys in that trade with Houston. You got Santana. You got their number 1 pitcher in the minor leagues. You made a trade and got Zach Davies, who's been young. Taylor Youngman is great. You still have Big Jim Nelson. You got a lot of young pitchers that you could build around. So I realize the season didn't go well, but I think there's still some redeemable qualities with the team.
Yeah, it really wasn't a good season for the Brewers at all. They ended the season 68-94, and it's actually their first 90-loss season since 2004. They started the season 2-13, so that kind of showed fans where they were headed. And then towards midseason, they traded away quite a few key players like Carlos Gomez and Aramis Ramirez, and then they brought in some younger players. So I feel like this year was more a rebuilding year for the Brewers, and there's more years to come. I think they have potential.
Yeah, hopefully they have some potential coming because it would be nice to go back to that magical season of 2011. We all remember how fun that was.
Rebuilding doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah, rebuilding. You saw just what you mentioned with the Cubs and what the Bucks. Yeah.
The Bucks.
Ex-Packers coach Joe Philbin just got fired from the Miami Dolphins. He was the offensive coordinator with the Packers in that Super Bowl season. Do you guys think this was the right move with the Dolphins letting him go?
They started off the season 1-3, and his overall record since 2012 is 24-28. I really do think it was the right thing to do. Something needed to happen. Right now, they're number 23 in total offense and number 30 in total defense. Last year, they were one of the top defenses in the league. And now, they had key acquisitions like Ndamukong Suh coming in there, which should have helped the defense, you would think. And it just kind of made them worse, and they needed to figure something out. So they just went with the head man, and hopefully it works out for him.
Nothing about Joe Philbin really screams to you this is the guy I want as my head coach. I don't know if you guys watched the Hard Knocks they had with the Miami Dolphins a couple years ago, but you got to see essentially all the behind-the-scenes stuff with Joe Philbin, and he's not a guy that really rallies you up or gets you to really want to fight for him on the field. You have a lot of stuff coming out that he's really not a great rah-rah guy. You have a lot of stuff coming out that he's not a great X's and O's guy. So what is he? Why would you want this guy as your head coach? I think, though, even though he is getting fired, when NFL coaches get fired, it's kind of, you can't fire the players, so fire the head coach. I think firing Philbin is a step in the right direction for them, but I don't think that's the only issues with the Dolphins. I think they have huge issues from top to bottom.
Well, we're going to take a short break. Why don't we take a minute to look at some cute, adorable little perfect pets.
Student-run television station WMCM-TV sends out a group of students to film some of the most precious animals of the Cooley Region Humane Society in a segment we like to call Perfect Pets. The Cooley Region Humane Society offers a variety of programs and services at little or no cost to help both animals and people in our community. If you have found or lost a pet, are in need of training assistance, need cat behavior consultation, desire to volunteer, need to surrender your pet, or are looking to adopt a pet, the Cooley Region Humane Society offers this and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Adopt or become a volunteer today. To find out more about these services, contact the Cooley Region Humane Society at 781-4014.
There you have it. There's some cute pets up for adoption. Give them a call. 781-4014 is the number. Well, guys, moving to the NFL season, we're a quarter of the way through already. Feels like we just started up. Who's your biggest surprise so far?
For me, I think the biggest surprise has to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I think a lot of people, when you think of the Bengals, you think Andy Dalton, not a really inspiring guy to have as your number one quarterback. But he has really surprised me, and I think a lot of people around the NFL. He's throwing for a high completion percentage. He's slinging it all around the yard. A.J. Green is playing out of his mind. The defense has always been good. And they're kind of a team that reminds me a little bit of the Packers, where this is a team that they build through the draft, and they sign their own guys. They keep them around. If you look at their roster, I think it's like something 15 or 16 guys on their starting lineup for offense and defense are guys that they've drafted. You've got Carlos Dunlap, you've got Malaluga, you've got Dalton, you've got A.J. Green, Tyler Eifert. They have players all up and down the roster that are guys that they've drafted. And I think this year it's finally starting to come to fruition that this team can be a player in the NFL.
My biggest surprise this year is the Atlanta Falcons. They just hired a new coach in Dan Quinn. He's a defensive coordinator out of Seattle. And, I mean, you see what a force Seattle was with him on defense as a defensive coordinator. And now he's a head coach there. He's improved their defense. I mean, not by much, but enough to, get them by. And then they have a high-powered offense in Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and now, as he's passed, 3 weeks, Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman actually has 7 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. And he's the first player since the merger to have 3 touchdowns in each of his first 2 starts. And then, I mean, you have Julio Jones, who is one of the top wide receivers in the league, if not the top. He had 34 catches through 3 games this year, which actually beat his own record through 3 games of 31 catches. And last year they finished 6-10, and now they're off to a 4-0 start. So I just feel, I don't know, they have a lot of potential.
You heard it from them. Some of the some of the biggest surprises in the NFL. How about some of the biggest disappointments?
My biggest disappointment is the Philadelphia Eagles. They in the preseason, they look like a really good offense. They just brought in DeMarco Murray as one of their big signees, and then Sam Bradford, they traded him with Nick Foles. They just look really good in the preseason. When they played the Packers, they dismantled their defense. They were just running all over us and passing all over us. And they've scored 3 points or fewer in 3 of the first 4 halves of the season, which is pretty disappointing for a Chip Kelly offense because he's known to have a pretty high-powered offense. And then DeMarco Murray, he has 29 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown through 3 games. He was injured 1 game. But through 4 games last year, he had 99 carries for 534 yards and 5 touchdowns. So it's quite the letdown for the team.
I would have to agree with you with the Eagles. This is Chip Kelly's first year as being able to take care of player personnel, and you're kind of seeing that product on the field. It's not really shaping out the way that he planned. For me, though, I would have to say either the Seahawks or the Lions. I think being a fan of a team in the NFC North, we see the Lions a lot, and we kind of expect they're going to have this high-powered offense. We kind of expect that their defense is going to, get after the quarterback. I realize they, lost guys like Sue and Fairley, but that team has not looked the same. They can't score at all. And another team is the Seattle Seahawks. They are a bad call in last night's game away from being 1-3. They can't run the football the same. Marshawn Lynch hasn't looked as good. They traded their best offensive lineman in the offseason to the Saints, and they can't run the football the same. So I think they might be a 500 team at the end of the year.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you guys that the Eagles is my biggest disappointment on this season. But now let's move to just teams total. Top 5 teams in the NFL. If you had to go with it right now through quarter of the way through the season, top 5 teams, go for it.
All right, so my top 5 would be the Patriots are my number 1. I mean, with Brady and Gronk, they're unstoppable. You really can't stop Gronk. Like Rex Ryan said, there's really nobody in the league that can cover him besides King Kong. So, I mean, they're pretty unstoppable. And then I have the Packers, of course. They have a high-powered offense, even with all the injuries that they've had to the line, to the receivers. I mean, Lacey being out and being injured with a bum ankle. They've been really good, and their defense is finally stepping up. Then I have Cincinnati because they're a surprise. I mean, they're kind of a surprise. They've always been pretty good, but Andy Dalton seems to make a lot of mistakes, and he just hasn't shown that this year. And they have a decent run game, and they're just an overall good team. Then I have Denver. Denver is actually the biggest surprise in my top 5 teams because Peyton Manning hasn't looked like the Peyton Manning he's been.
Definitely not.
His passes just look weak, and I don't know. He just hasn't been throwing many touchdowns either, and it's the defense that's keeping them in there. They're the number 1 defense in the league this year. And then my last team is Arizona. They had a close loss to the Rams last week by 2 points, but they have a really good offense. I mean, Carson Palmer now coming back from his ACL injury. He's been almost lights out. In their run game with Chris Johnson, now that Andre Ellington's out, he's been showing up. And then their defense, I mean, they have Tyrann Mathieu and Patrick Peterson, who are top 5 safeties and cornerbacks in my mind. So, yeah, those are my top 5 teams.
Alec, were you looking at my notes? I have the same exact teams. I have New England, Green Bay, Cincinnati, Denver, and Arizona. Just like you talked about with New England, offensively, they can go with anybody. I think the one thing about New England, though, is when you look at who they've played, they really haven't played anybody. And I think it's between New England and Green Bay who's going to go 16-0. I mean, you can actually have a legit conversation about that this year because when you look at their schedules, and initially it kind of looked like it was going to be tough. People were high on the Bills. People were high on the Dolphins. The Jets are actually playing pretty well. But New England looks like they're just going to be able to steamroll. When you talked about Denver with Peyton Manning, I think the interesting thing with them is when you think about Denver now, you don't really think about Peyton Manning. He's kind of an afterthought. You have to talk about that defense. I mean, their secondary is amazing. They get after the quarterback. If you watch them play on Sunday against the Vikings, they made Teddy Bridgewater's life a living heck out there. I mean, they were getting after Teddy. They can get after the quarterback. They force turnovers all the time. Denver is a really good team, and you know what? Their defense might be able to carry them to another AFC championship.
Yeah, I agree with the portion that Peyton Manning has kind of gone into the back burners with the Denver Broncos. You know, he's an all-time great quarterback. He does an awesome job, and he has done a phenomenal job throughout his career. But that defense there is doing things for them, which makes the quarterback look good, and it's helped them win games like that.
And when we talk about defense, and you pointed it out too, I think Arizona, because they're in Phoenix, and that's not really a sexy place to talk about, they get kind of lost in the shuffle. Arizona's a really good team. Carson Palmer's looked really good this year. They're about 3 deep at wide receiver. You have Fitzgerald, you have Brown, and you have Malcolm Floyd. Their defense is great. You talked about the cornerbacks. They can still get after the quarterback a little bit. Arizona, they'll probably be up there with Green Bay as the best teams in the NFC.
We got to talk about the Packers a little bit. I mean,
I think because we see them all the time, it's just kind of like it's almost like you expect this sometimes.
Yeah.
I think for us, with our generation, we're extremely lucky with the Packers because in my lifetime, I've seen 2 quarterbacks.
Yep.
I mean, I've gone from Favre to Rodgers, and I haven't had to worry about that at all. It's been great. Like, I get to watch that every Sunday, sit back, put my feet up.
Yeah.
Watch the dominance from the quarterback position.
It's just amazing to watch what he can do, and then you watch other quarterbacks, and it's just weird to think that Rodgers doesn't make some of the mistakes and some of the turnovers that other quarterbacks do. Speaking of Rodgers, MVP race, he's definitely up in there.
I have 2 for my MVP race. My top 2 are Rodgers and Brady. Rodgers this year has 1 more game than Brady because Brady had a bye this past week. But through 4 games for Rodgers, he has 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 995 yards. But without the stats, he just makes incredible plays, like throws that people can't make in the NFL. he makes it look easy, like it's nothing for him. He can scramble and throw off his back foot, and it's a perfect pass for him. And then for Brady, like I said, he's only played 3 games, 1 game less than Rodgers, but he has 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 1,112 yards. So he's a little higher in the yard category. But last year, it was, I think, the Chiefs game. After that, everybody kind of doubted the Patriots and said Brady's like done, kind of like Peyton Manning is this year.
Yep.
And then since then, he's 16-2, and he's been putting on a show. And, you know, those are my top 2. I also have AP. He's up and rising. He's coming up there, but not quite.
I completely agree with everything you said about Tom Brady. But one of the interesting things, I can't remember what I was listening to the other day, but when they were describing Aaron Rodgers, they essentially described him as a mobile Tom Brady. So what would you rather have, Tom Brady or a mobile Tom Brady? I would pick Aaron Rodgers every single time. I think people forget, he doesn't have Jordy Nelson this year. He's playing with Randall Cobb, who's been injured. That dude is like this close from breaking his collarbone in the preseason. He's hobbled out there. You're playing a rookie in Ty Montgomery. You're playing a young tight end. The offensive line has injuries. I mean, there's injuries on defense, and still they are blowing teams out. They're putting points up, except for last week. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is the clear-cut MVP. I think you might need to mention Gronk, too. Like, there's no one like him in the league. There's no one like him in the league.
That is so true. I think, personally, that Aaron Rodgers is going to take it, win it back-to-back. Maybe next year I'd like to see him win back-to-back-to-back. But let's take another break. Let's take a look at our beautiful campus.
At the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, surround yourself with potential. Surround yourself with lifelong friends. Step on campus and be welcomed with a friendly smile. It's just like home.
I knew UWL was the place for me when I came for a campus tour. Everyone is so welcoming and friendly. The small campus makes me feel at home.
The beauty of western Wisconsin's River Valley can be seen while hiking the bluffs or biking the marsh.
Surround yourself with challenging academics.
Competitive to get in, and your teachers and classmates will challenge you to succeed.
A well-rounded education. Our motto is Mens Corpuscu. That's Latin for mind and body. We're dedicated to the whole person, providing a rigorous education and appreciation for physical and recreational well-being.
Learn from great teachers. Conduct research. Connect with people who will make a difference in your life. Prepare for your exciting future.
Surround yourself with distinction. Surround yourself with UW-La Crosse.
Welcome back, everyone. This is our segment we like to call Something or Nothing. So, Derrick Rose hurt again. Go figure, right? Is that something or nothing?
Come on, D-Rose fan.
Yeah, Derrick Rose is my favorite player in the NBA, so I think this is nothing. This injury is to his left orbital bone around his eye. I mean, the coach said he was just doing a good drive to the hoop and then kicked it out, and Taj Gibson hit him with an elbow. And I feel like this is an injury that could happen with the way he plays. I mean, I know his knees have been bad and stuff, but at least this is with his eye, and he can come. He's supposed to join back this week, not to play, but to watch film and like the new schemes with the new coach by Wednesday. And then next week, he's supposed to get back and practice. But I really don't think this is anything.
Camera 2, I want you to get in here really close. I'm going to go Stephen A. Smith on you here, okay? It's always something with Derrick Rose. It never ends with this guy. Seriously. Both of his knees, surgery, orbital bone now. He's got a Patrick Kane-type allegation hanging over his head. I won't go too deep into that, but look at it. It's hanging over there. It's pretty gruesome stuff, if true. I mean, this guy is already talking about free agency for himself in 2017. Come on, like, what if I was a Chicago Bulls fan, I would be infuriated with Derrick Rose. You're supposed to be the best player on the team, and you're talking about free agency in 2017. It's something. It's always something with Derrick Rose. It's never about the team with that guy. I am a Bucks fan, if you can't tell from that, but it's something. It's something.
Well, there you have it. Man doesn't like Derrick Rose. Something or nothing here. Texas players a little upset. The little bit of a media Twitter battle. What's going on there?
I'll give you the rundown on that. I saw it come up yesterday through my little ticker. A safety for the University of Texas, an upperclassman, was asked by a reporter, the season has been dismal for Texas. He was asked, what can you attribute that to? And he essentially went off on the young freshmen that are playing for Texas right now. Texas has a lot of young guys in starting lineups that are playing. He essentially said that they're not putting in the work, they're not coming to watch film, they're not trying hard in practice. They essentially think it's a joke. And the freshman player's response was to go on Twitter and then mock that safety, that upperclassman, not listen to him, laugh at him, call him out. It's just a huge debacle on an already terrible season for Texas. I think this is just a microcosm of what's been going on in Austin for the past 5 years.
Definitely. I mean, this last game, they lost 50-7 by TCU. TCU is ranked number 2 in the country, but still, that's pretty bad. And then another freshman took to Twitter. His name was Chris Boyd, but he retweeted a tweet by some TCU fan at halftime of the game. Like I just said, halftime of the game, about transferring to TCU. And then later he apologized about it. But, I mean, still, come on. They can't take to Twitter about that kind of stuff.
Little advice for all you freshmen out there. Don't go to Twitter with your problems. Yeah, another something or nothing. Michigan State, Ohio State, they almost got beat this week by no-names. Is that something, or is that just a bad week?
Well, I don't think many people in this area were probably able to watch the college football slate this Saturday because of our wonderful festival we had in town. But if you're like me and are a bartender and couldn't enjoy the festivities during the daytime, I was able to watch a lot of college football. I was able to watch Michigan State almost get beat at home by Purdue, a team that might win one game in the Big Ten this year. And Ohio State, if Sudfeld didn't get hurt for Indiana, Ohio State might have a loss and no longer be number 1 in the nation anymore. I think the Big Ten, a lot of people are down on the Big Ten this year. This weekend didn't help them out at all.
No, they both definitely struggled this past week. And, I mean, it's not even this past week for Ohio State. They've been struggling the past few weeks to get that offensive going. I mean, that offense, even the defense, they're full of superstars. I mean, you have Braxton Miller, Ezekiel Elliott, the 2 QBs.
5 stars everywhere.
They're just such a good team. They just haven't utilized them to, their best potential. And I think for Ohio State, they have the best is yet to come. I think they're going to figure it out. It's just taking some time to figure that out. But for Michigan State, they're without 8 of their starters. So they're just in a bad time right now, but I think they'll figure it out as well.
I think a lot of it, though, is a lot of people were really high on Michigan State when they beat Oregon, and they immediately jumped up to number 2. Oregon got housed at home by Utah the next week. So that Oregon win doesn't look too great. I think it's a little bit of fool's gold on Michigan State's part. That win doesn't look as good. They really haven't played anybody. I think Ohio State, like you talked about, they have 5-star recruits all over that team. That should probably even out for them, but I do think there is real trouble for Michigan State.
Yeah, I think this is nothing. I think it's just a bad week, and things are going to look bright in the future. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, really, you would think that when you have these high expectations for these teams in the Big Ten, where I just talked about, it's not a great conference. They should be blowing these teams out. When you move to a college football playoff, the committee is looking at that, to determine if you're going to make the playoff or not. So you really have to blow these teams out if you want to make yourself look good.
Speaking of blowing things out, we already saw your steam on Derrick Rose. We're moving into the rants portion. We see you have a lot of steam. Let's see what you got.
All right, so tonight is the first night of the Bucks season. They start a preseason game against the Chicago Bulls. I think it's in Chicago tonight, but the thing that I really want to just say is the Bucks are a really exciting team. They're up and coming. They've kind of been like the little stepchild behind the Brewers and the Packers the past couple of years. They are young. They're exciting. They have great young players. Watch them on RAQ Radio. I will talk about them every Tuesday night at 9. Join me to talk about the Bucks.
Alec, you got anything?
So my rant is about the Seattle Seahawks. Last night they got another bogus call. KJ Wright, Cam Chancellor stripped the ball from Kelvin Johnson on the 1-yard line, and KJ Wright had swatted it illegally out of the back of the end zone. And it should have been Detroit ball, but the officials gave it to Seattle, and that ended the game. And that's just like the Fail Mary from 2012 with the Packers. I mean, Seattle's just getting all these lucky breaks with NFC North opponents.
Oh, there you have it. It's been a great show, guys. Thanks for joining me. Tune in later this afternoon. Afternoon Delight will be on. Thank you for joining us.